Okay, let's dive in. Most of us have probably bumped up against the limits of current AI,
Right,
right?
definitely.
Like, you're trying to get a chatbot to handle something complex, maybe a project with lots of steps,
Mm-hmm.
and it just seems to lose track, or forgets what you told it earlier,
Yeah.
or flat out says it can't use the tools you actually need.
Yeah, that's a super common frustration. I mean, AI's come a long way, incredibly fast, but there's still this significant gap,
Right.
especially for tasks that need to, you know, maintain logic over maybe hundreds, even thousands of steps and connect with lots of different external tools seamlessly. Current models often just stumble.
Exactly. It feels like you're constantly having to nudge it or restart it, pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
And the source of material you shared today introduces something that, well, it claims to tackle exactly those problems, Flowith Neo.
Hmm.
It's being presented as this advanced AI agent, engineered specifically to handle the kind of scale and complexity that trips up the systems we're used to.
That's right. Flowith Neo from Flowith AI. They're positioning it as a potential new paradigm, promising to redefine how we interact with AI by overcoming those specific hurdles we just mentioned.
Okay.
And the source makes some pretty bold claims, particularly around its capabilities being practically unlimited.
Practically unlimited. Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive, based on the material you've provided. We need to unpack those claims.
Right.
What does the source actually mean by infinite steps,
Mhm.
context, tool integration? We should evaluate the potential impact, across different areas.
Huh?
Look at the benefits it suggests, and also discuss the challenges and future implications that come with an agent this powerful. It's really about understanding if these claims hold water and what it could mean for you.
And the source does a good job setting this up, framing that core problem first.
Yeah.
It explicitly mentions the restricted context windows of most models, their limited short-term memory, essentially.
Right, how much they can remember at once.
Exactly. And the difficulty they have maintaining logical flow over long sequences. Plus, they're often rigid or uh, limited ways of using external software or getting real-time info. These are the big roadblocks.
They prevent AI from really automating those complex multi-stage jobs.
Precisely. It's the difference between asking for help drafting one email
Yeah, yeah.
and asking it to run an entire marketing campaign from start to finish, adapting as it goes.
That's a huge difference. And Flowith Neo is presented as the architectural answer, promising these practically unlimited capabilities.
That's the core promise highlighted in the source,
Yeah.
yeah. Execution steps, context, tool adaptability.
Okay, let's get into that architecture then. The source calls it its infinite edge. First up, infinite steps. What does that actually mean? How does it supposedly handle tasks with hundreds or thousands of steps without, getting lost?
So this is where the source suggests a really fundamental design difference. It's not just about handling more steps in a row. It implies Flowith Neo has an architecture that can break down massive projects into smaller, manageable parts,
Mm-hmm.
execute them one after another, but crucially, maintain its state, its understanding, its logic throughout the entire process.
So it doesn't just forget what happened 10 steps ago.
That's the claim. Unlike models that might lose coherence or need resets, Flowith Neo is supposedly designed to persist, to build on its previous work almost indefinitely,
Right.
which allows it, theoretically, to tackle huge things. The source gives examples like completing a whole software project, from requirements gathering to the final code, or
Right.
even writing a long, complex novel. It's framed as a different way of managing the task itself over time.
So it's less like just a longer to-do list
Hmm.
and more like having a really smart project manager inside the AI that never gets tired or forgets the plan, even if the project takes weeks or months.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Persistent intelligence and context over potentially very long execution times.
Well-
And that ties into the second point, unlimited context. The source gets specific here. It mentions a context window capacity of up to 10 million tokens.
10 million tokens.
Okay.
Maybe break that down for us.
Yeah.
What's a token roughly mean in this context?
Sure. Think of a token as roughly a word, or maybe a bit less, sometimes just part of a word in English.
Got it.
So 10 million tokens. That's just a massive amount of information. It means Flowith Neo could, in theory, process and kind of hold in its working memory the content of, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of pages of text. or like an entire large database or a huge software code base all at the same time.
So it can understand all that simultaneously.
That's the idea. It allows for this really deep understanding of a complex project or a huge data set that current models just can't match because their context windows are much, much smaller, maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of tokens, not millions.
So it's not just remembering the last paragraph you typed. It could potentially keep track of, say, the entire history of interactions with a client, or all the key papers in a research field, or every single file in a complicated software project, all active in its mind at once.
That is exactly the capability the source is pointing to. A level of sustained comprehension that's just critical for those really complex, knowledge-heavy tasks.
Okay, that's impressive.
And then there's the third piece, unlimited tools. The source connects this to something it calls the Oracle framework.
Oracle framework sounds significant. What does the source say about how it achieves this unlimited tool use?
Well, the source describes the Oracle framework as being part of Neo's core reasoning. It's not just about having tools, but about figuring out when it needs one.
Oh, okay.
So it can apparently identify that a task requires something external, maybe live data from the web, or generating an image, or running some specific code, or talking to another company's API.
Right.
And then it doesn't just recognize the need, it supposedly figures out how to use the right tool for the job.
So it's not just a fixed list of tools it knows.
That's the claim. The source suggests it's not limited to some predefined set. It can learn, adapt, and interface with essentially any accessible external resource that massively extends what it can do beyond just its built-in knowledge.
Okay, hold on. So it's like it realizes it needs a skill it doesn't have, like maybe accessing a specific financial database, and then it can kind of teach itself how to use the software or the API for that database.
That's the picture the source is painting, yes. An agent capable of complex reasoning and dynamic learning and application of external tools. It makes it incredibly flexible for real-world stuff that involves lots of different systems and data sources.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a different level of automation, which leads to what the source calls a new operational paradigm, Intelligent Automation 247. How does it actually work differently in practice?
Well, a key aspect mentioned is continuous cloud execution, meaning you can set it on a task, maybe something that'll take days or even weeks, and it just runs uninterrupted in the cloud. It doesn't need you to keep prompting it or restarting it to maintain momentum. So you can actually automate those genuinely complex, long-haul workflows without having to constantly babysit it.
So you're not just like running a quick script, you're launching a process that can sustain itself.
Exactly. And the interface apparently reflects this too. The source mentions it's not just a standard linear chat interface.
So
it describes it as a multi-thread canvas interface.
a canvas, like a visual whiteboard or something where you can see the different parts?
Yeah, something like that. The idea seems to be that for these really complex tasks with potentially thousands of steps and maybe multiple things happening at once, just scrolling through a chat history would be completely useless.
Totally. A nightmare.
So the canvas gives you a visual, structured way to see the whole workflow. You can maybe see different threads of activity, track progress on subtasks, maybe even step in and adjust things in a more organized fashion. It's built for managing complexity, not just conversation.
That makes a lot of practical sense. Trying to debug a week-long automated process through a chat log sounds impossible. So with all these capabilities, the steps, the context, the tools, the interface, where does the source see Flowith Neo making the biggest waves? Which sectors?
The source points to potentially transformative impacts in a few key areas. First, software development and content creation.
Okay.
It suggests Neo could automate huge chunks of the work, generating code, helping build games, creating websites, even automating entire social media campaigns, like writing and scheduling posts.
Wow.
The source sees this as potentially slashing development times and, opening up creative possibilities by making the execution part easier.
Automating big parts of creative or technical work.
Yeah,
the efficiency gains suggested they're massive.
Huge. Then there's research and data analysis, that massive context window we talked about.
The 10 million tokens.
Yeah. It means Neo could potentially process enormous volumes of information. Think academic journals, market research, scientific data, and then generate detailed summaries, spot trends, or even draft comprehensive reports pretty much on its own.
So it could dramatically speed up research.
That's the potential highlighted, yeah. Like a super-powered research assistant that can synthesize vast amounts of info.
Okay.
And finally, the source talks about broader business automation.
How so?
Because it can integrate with all these different tools, the idea is it could automate complex business processes that cut across different departments or software systems. Things involving multiple databases, decision points, tasks that are currently just too complicated or fragile for typical automation tools.
Right, like RPA often struggles with complexity.
Exactly. So the potential here is for, really optimizing operations and boosting efficiency across a whole company.
So we're moving beyond just automating clicks to potentially automating entire intelligent business functions. Okay, this all sounds incredibly powerful, but the source does bring up challenges and things to consider, right? It's not all smooth sailing.
Oh, absolutely. It mentions practical hurdles. For one, the access model right now, invitation codes, wait lists, that naturally slows down initial adoption.
Sure.
And the source kind of implies that, well, using an agent this complex might involve a steeper learning curve than just chatting with a simple bot, especially for less technical users.
That makes sense. Rolling out something this sophisticated takes time and training.
And, really critically, the source flags the absolute need for strong ethical and security frameworks.
Yeah, that seems crucial.
I mean, think about it. An autonomous agent running thousands of steps, accessing unlimited tools, processing huge data volumes, questions about responsibility, control, safety, they become really central.
Like who's liable if it makes a mistake or accesses data it shouldn't?
Exactly. The source really stresses that developing robust governance alongside the tech is vital. You can't just unleash it.
Those safety and accountability questions definitely get amplified with this level of autonomy and power.
For sure. And this kind of development also makes you think about the future of how humans and AI even interact.
How so?
Well, agents like Flowith Neo, if they really are highly self-directed and can manage complex projects with minimal input, that could fundamentally change work, right?
Yeah.
Maybe human roles shift more towards like high-level oversight, setting the strategy, asking the big questions, or maybe new kinds of creative work that are enabled by having such a powerful agent as a collaborator.
Right. What does our role become when the AI can handle so much of the execution?
That's the big question it raises.
Okay, so let's try to summarize this deep dive based on the source material we've covered. Flowith Neo is positioned as a pretty significant step change for AI agents.
Yeah, aiming to break past those common limits we see in context size, number of steps, and using external tools, describing its capabilities as practically unlimited.
And its architecture, as described, is really geared towards automating those complex, long-running tasks that have been mostly out of reach for AI until now.
Right. Things like massive software projects, deep research analysis, really sophisticated business process automation. That's the target.
And the source definitely paints a picture of huge potential impact across industries. Driving efficiency, enabling new kinds of innovation by tackling complexity directly.
Definitely. But it also acknowledges the challenges, access, usability, and particularly the critical need for strong ethical and security guardrails.
Those have to be figured out.
Absolutely. But overall, the source presents Flowith Neo as a potential catalyst, maybe signaling a shift towards AI agents that can genuinely manage large-scale, complex projects much more autonomously.
Which brings us right to that final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Building on all this, if agents like Flowith Neo can autonomously handle these incredibly vast and complex projects, what new kinds of problems or opportunities does that open up for you in your work, your creative projects, whatever you do?
Yeah.
And maybe just as importantly, what new questions does a tool with this kind of potential raise for you personally about where we're heading with the human-AI relationship?